Alright, so warm day here in Pacific Palisades. I am at Will Rogers State Beach, and I'm thinking of making something of the scene behind me. As usual, I'll be using the scene as inspiration. I will be moving some things around. In fact, I think I'm going to move the lifeguard tower to the right. I'll be painting on an 11 by 14 inch gessoed panel, and I forgot my palette box at home, so I just squeezed out some paint onto an old panel. I've got phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, alizarin crimson, burnt sienna, titanium white, yellow ochre, and cadmium yellow medium. I've got a number 3 natural bristle filbert, and I've thinned some burnt sienna with odorless mineral spirits. I decided to place the horizon at about 1/3 from the top of the panel. I'm including these distant cliffs or mountains. I think the biggest challenge will be deciding where I want the lifeguard tower and how big I want it to be. I think this is looking pretty good. I experimented a bit off camera, and you can see I just sort of wiped out the lines, but I feel like this is the crucial part of the composition. I don't want it to be too small because it is an important part of the picture, obviously. It also creates a sense of depth by having this tower large and then the distant hills or cliffs be, much smaller. I'll also use atmospheric perspective to push these cliffs back. As you can see, they're very light in value. There's quite a bit of moisture in the atmosphere, in particular over the water. All right, I've got a dark mixture here of alizarin crimson, ultramarine blue, and I did add a touch of titanium white. The cast shadow beneath the lifeguard tower is the darkest dark. I am pushing the mix towards purple, and I'm hoping that this purplish blue next to the yellow of the sand will create a light effect. And there are a few dark legs. I've surfed at this beach a couple times, but I've never painted here, which is kind of surprising because it is a classic Southern California scene, but I mostly prefer to paint in areas that are less crowded, although I've got to say today is not crowded at all. There's hardly anyone down here. The back of the tower is in shadow. I am squinting at the scene to throw my eyes out of focus, and I'm just focusing on shapes. The roof is casting a shadow on this side of the tower as well. I want to add as little detail as possible. And the way I deal with complicated or detailed subjects is to squint at the subject to simplify it, and then just look for the light-dark pattern. I've switched over to a number 4 natural bristle flat, and I've got a mixture here of ultramarine blue, phthalo blue, and titanium white. And the value relationship between the water and the tower is crucial. So I am starting by blocking in the water. I will be adjusting the color and value of the water, but I just want to get something on the panel. I haven't quite decided where I want the water line, but I think something like this right here. That's another reason I'm leaving the paint somewhat thin, is because I'm going to be experimenting and I want to be able to wipe down the paint if I want to change something. So sort of taking a non-committal approach here, or one that allows me some flexibility. It's one thing I do like about oil painting is the ability to just wipe off something that isn't working, or scrape it off with a palette knife. So oil paints are great for exploration. There's a railing right here, but I will be adding that afterwards. All right, now I've switched over to a number 6 natural bristle flat, and I've got a mixture here of titanium white and ultramarine blue. Normally I add some phthalo blue to my sky mixtures, but there's going to be a lot of blue-green. The water will be blue-green, and then the lifeguard tower is sort of an aqua color. So I am going to go with a pure mix of ultramarine and titanium white here. For the distant cliffs, I'm starting with titanium white, burnt sienna, and I've graded down a little bit with some ultramarine blue. Pretty sure this value is too dark. That's all right. It's a good starting point. And these cliffs in the foreground have some trees on them. So I've got a green mixture here. And I used phthalo blue and yellow ochre, which is kind of unusual for me, but it seems to be working. I have found over the years that there are many ways to get the mix that I'm looking for. And so I've become less particular about the colors on my palette. Sometimes it's fun to experiment with colors that you may feel limit you. For example, using just yellow ochre as your yellow. And you'd be surprised what you can do, even with just yellow ochre as your yellow. It's a bit more saturation and a darker value on these cliffs in the foreground. There are also some apartments which I may add just little bits of light in here, or houses, we'll see. But for now, just trying to establish an interesting value pattern and composition. For the sand mixture, I'm using titanium white and yellow ochre, and I have added a bit of burnt sienna to the mix. I find that when mixing yellows, it is helpful to add some red to the mix. There's always some red in there. Oftentimes, if I'm mixing a yellow and I don't add red, the mix turns towards green, which is very unappealing when you're trying to paint sand. Still using the number 6 natural bristle flat. The sand in the distance actually has quite a bit of purple in it, so I may be adding that at some point. We'll see. And there's some ice plant in the foreground. I'm not sure if I'll keep this, but I'm gonna add it for now. I do like having things in the foreground to help create a feeling of depth. I do not want this to mimic the lifeguard tower though, so I've got to be careful about that. I decided to change the size and shape of the ice plant. And I kind of just have it in the corner like this, which is closer to what it really looks like. I've got a mixture of titanium white and I've added a touch of ultramarine blue. The white water is the lightest value in the composition. There's also some white water out here on this point. And I can't really see any white water out here, but it could be good to add a little bit just to draw the eye into the distance. The ocean is pretty calm today. Apparently the water temperature is 72 degrees, which is pretty nice. So I might have to jump in. I'm not going to surf because the waves are not good for surfing, but swimming or floating around sounds really nice. For the light portion of the tower, I'm starting with a mixture of phthalo blue and titanium white. I've not added any yellow to the mix, although I may at some point, we'll see. Still using the number 6 natural bristle flat because I do not want to get carried away with detail. And it is going to be a challenge to use this brush, especially in areas like this where there's a lot going on. I may break out a smaller brush towards the end, we'll see. All right, at this point I've got all the colors blocked in. I step back about 10 or 15 feet, just looking at the composition and seeing if there's anything I want to change. I feel like I like the arrangement of shapes, so I'm going to keep going. The next step will be to adjust the colors and values, and this tower is the most important part, and it's going to be a challenge for sure. I've switched over to a number 4 natural bristle flat, and I'm adding pure titanium white to the lifeguard tower here, just because I want to lighten up the value of this bluish color here so that it's slightly darker in value than the white water. All right, I've added some ultramarine blue. I am seeing warm reflections in the shadow portion of the tower, but I will add those afterwards. There is so much reflected light off the sand that the shadow portion of the tower is actually not that dark. I stepped back and the shadows looked a little too light in value, so I'm just adding some ultramarine direct to the color I already put down. And I think that looks better. The shapes are really small, but I am trying to apply the paint with intention, apply the paint with confidence, and nobody will question you. And if they do, it doesn't matter. Adding some thicker paint to the sky. I'm sticking with the ultramarine color though, but I am lightening it up a little bit. The value is a bit too dark, and it looks like I'll need to lighten up the distant cliffs because now they're looking too dark. For the distant cliffs, I'm adding a light grayish purple directly to the color that I already laid down. Trying to create some separation from the land in the foreground. For the distant buildings, I'm using a natural bristle flat. I'm using the number 6, kind of big. You can see the strokes are a little messy, but when you back up, it does read as apartment buildings, hopefully. But using this brush is going to keep me from getting too careful and overworking the painting. All right, so here's what I finished up with. I spent about an hour and a half on this painting. I may do a few minor touch-ups, but I do want to leave it loose and spontaneous. And I feel like it looks pretty good, so I'm going to wait till it dries, live with it, and see how I feel about it. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you'd like to see some extra videos and help support the channel, there's a Patreon link down below. It's the Patreon support that helps keep me making these videos, and it's much appreciated. There's also a PayPal tip jar down below, so check it out. Other than that, stay creative. I'll see you guys in the next video.